Minesha here, your life and leadership doctor. And I am super excited and elated to introduce to you a dear friend and extraordinaire, Miss Tamara Smith. Thank you so much, Tamara, for just sharing this space with me. I'm so honored to be able to connect with you in this space. I'm looking forward to some juicy conversation as a former traveling mom, wife, business owner. And so I
Yes.
really am looking forward to diving deep in what life looks like for you. For those of you who are following us for the first time, work life harmony is just real people doing real life. And the things that makes the people that follow my podcast different from just everyone else is that we don't want to just show up in a state of contentment and average. We want to
Mm.
live an extraordinary life. And so the people who are listening and following, the goal is of this podcast is very simple, is to take these principles that we teach through conversation and transform them into practices. If you do that, there is no way that you won't be able to embrace and create your own work life harmony. So it's all about loving, living, and leading differently. And I know for you, if you could just give us a little snapshot into your world and
Yeah.
start with just the roles and responsibilities so people can really connect with what life looks like for you. And yeah, share with us a little bit about all the roles and responsibilities you have.
Sure. Well, Dr. Minesha, it's a pleasure, of course. I know we could talk all day, so
Yes.
we're gonna try to cover a lot of it with a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I'm Tamara Smith. You can call me Tam. I'm one of the co-owners at Love of Urban Design, and I also oversee media and brand partnerships and connections there as well. So we're a group of creatives that came together and decided that there needed to be more opportunities and platforms for black and brown professionals in creative industries. And we try to create those spaces so that they can be highlighted and realize their own value while others see their value as well. And we hope that we can continue to help them like build their capacity in that sense. So we just our biggest week of the year is during Art Basel, and we just finished that down in Miami, the Miami Art Basel, not the one in Europe, not yet, but that was a great time, and we're kind of on the post production end now. But I also work with several different nonprofit and for profit organizations, and just providing creative solutions to increase their engagement, to get their story and their voices out into communities, and hopefully that translates into more success for whatever they're building.
That's
So
awesome.
I
I love
partner
it.
with Women Wednesdays here, things like that, Women
Mm-hmm.
Wednesdays chambers,
Mm-hmm.
organizations like that. But
Okay.
outside of all that, I am a mom. I'm a wife. I'm
Yes.
a mom.
Yes.
I'm a sister. I all the things that are the most important to me.
Yes.
Those are the titles I wear very proudly. So
Awesome. And I think that it was important for you to emphasize the roles because that to me is just indicative of why work life balance doesn't exist. Because how do you take all
mhm.
those precious things that you just named and try to balance it with work? you know,
Right, right. Because
it's
there's
not
really no
even.
competition. There's no
It's not.
competition there.
It's not.
Yeah.
And so the
Mhm.
idea is to blend. And so like you, I know we can relate, and just the people who are listening, we love our work. And for me, work is God's work, right? So it's not the
Right.
job, it's the life's work, it's the assignment. And so I always like for people to know that it's nothing wrong with loving your work, right? So
Right. Right.
people like put a derogatory comment around workaholism and all that. A workaholic is only someone who is passionate about the work that they do. The issue is not the work, it's the priorities, right? Not prioritizing your self care, not prioritizing the family, it's the priorities. It's not the work because we want to do God's work. We want to advance the kingdom. We want to be able to show up and use the gifts
Correct.
that He's given us, right? That's a part of it as well. I looked at a case study and I thought it was so ironic how a gentleman, he just did only life, only was around his family. He just kind of did a binge of work. And what he realized is that he still wasn't fully fulfilled because he stopped
Wow.
work and he was just, it just he merged with family and brothers and a sister and really standing strong in those other roles. But he still wasn't experiencing the full fulfillment. So it takes the both, the blend of the work and the life that creates the full, complete freedom that we're all seeking for, right? And so I love that you were able to really express the roles that really make you proud because I feel that people that are listening can really relate to that. And I think
Mhm.
for me, it's the driving motivation of why we show up the way we show up, you know, because of these people that are in our life that matters so much to us, right? So you talked earlier about some of the things that you had going on, and there's some juicy stuff. I love it. I love it. I love it. Especially being a conduit for people to see their value and to get their
Right.
vision out there to the marketplace. I think that that is such a beautiful calling that you have. I know you from back when, right? So I want to kind of go back to go forward. And
Yeah.
I want you to kind of tap into what it was like for you before you found out your zone of extraordinary, the way I call it. Before you were the Tam G, you know, the owner and co-owner of the
Right.
urban design and all that. You know, there's women who are listening and leaders who are listening that maybe at that beginning stage where they're working that 9 to 5, but they are considering doing more. They know that there's something more. There's something stirring up for them to step out into entrepreneurship and to figure out what their gifts are. And there's some people who struggle because they have so many gifts, a lot like
Hmm.
you, and they don't really know where to start, you know? So, how did you navigate through those emotions in that whole process to get where you are today?
Well, I think it started with trying to understand why I did the work that I did. So even if it was, I started my entire professional career as an elementary school teacher, which at that time I loved it. I loved being with those students. But when I started to be restless in that, it confused me. I went to school for this. I thought I would do this for 30 years. They would give me an award. I would retire. I thought this was it. I was about 5 years into it, and even my students were asking me what I wanted to be when I grow up, and I'm like, I think I'm doing it, but like, God, what
Right,
are you trying to
right,
say?
right.
So you
That's
from
awesome.
the mouth of babes, right?
Right,
So,
right.
but I had to start exploring why teaching was so exciting for me and why at the same time I was so interested in the fashion industry and why I was, kind of moonlighting as an event planner on an event planning team at the same time. Like, what is the motivation behind all of these things? And for me, I call that the common thread. Like, what connects all of these seemingly random activities and industries and interests together. And finding that was so freeing for me. Finding that I love seeing a process from beginning to end. I love a project. I don't want something that goes on infinitely. I like to see beginning to end. Realizing that I love the light bulb moment. Like I loved it in my students. I love seeing a woman put on an outfit and see herself in a different light. I love the light bulb moment. So finding little bits and pieces like that, even while I was in, you know, a 9 to 5 or in, my profession at the time, was very freeing for me because it made me feel like a wanderer with purpose as opposed to
Yes.
someone who's just kind of, you know,
Existing.
existing and trying to figure, I feel lost and confused, but
Right.
every move I make feels very intentional because
Mhm.
I know that common thread and I see
Yeah.
why I'm attracted to it.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So tell us a little bit about you found your zone of extraordinary. Opportunities start opening up for you like crazy. You found yourself traveling all the time. And then that what I call that defining moment happen where
Mm,
success met your just your ideal desires. They started to conflict because you were always away from the house.
I
How did
was.
you begin to make that pivot, and what was some of the most challenging moments for you when you were living the dream and getting those things, and it was at compromise of your other roles?
Well, I think it was in my last full-time employment role. So I was working for a nonprofit organization, really enjoyed it. It combined people and engagement and ministry all at once. And I thought, oh, this is it. Once again, I'm thinking I'm going to be here for a long time. But in the middle of that role and in the middle of a pandemic, I I was pregnant once again. And, at the time, it was a bit of a surprise. And, it was great. Me and my husband were very excited about it. But because of that pregnancy, I had to spend a lot of time on bed rest.
Mm.
And that is what sat me down and made me really start to reflect. Like when this baby is born, even though it wasn't my first child, do I want to be gone all the time? You know, I think before that time, when I thought about my children as babies, I thought, well, I can keep traveling while they're really small, and then, once they start to realize I'm gone all the time, I'll make sure I'm home. Or I would go the other direction where I'll say, well, I'll make sure I'm home while they're tiny, but when they get a little bigger, then they're a little bit more independent, then I can travel again. But I think what happens is sometimes we don't allow ourselves to fully evolve.
Hmm.
Like, you don't have a moment to stop and think about,
So
what do
good.
I actually want right now? And that's what that pregnancy made me do. And I fought it. Even after I had the baby, I did a 3 or 4 month maternity leave. I went back to work. I worked at home while trying to keep the baby right here on camera. Look how cute she is. Um, and I started to travel again. I was pumping in airports. I was pumping in hotel rooms. I was pumping in conference rooms,
Wow.
everywhere, trying to keep up my supply. I mean, I looked at all of that and I realized that it was getting harder and harder to justify
Mm.
what I thought I wanted in that
Yeah,
moment.
that's so
And
good.
it made me say, "What is this even what I really want?" I mean, I thought I worked for this, but I'm here, and it made me go back to that common thread. Is
That's so
is
good. I have to like I'm on the edge of my seat like we're going to put a pin in this. And the
okay.
reason why we put a pin in conversations through the podcast, for those of you who follow me, you already know why, is that we're extrapolating the principles so that we can move them into practices, right? This is where true transformation takes place. So what will begin to happen? And that's why I love for you all to continue to keep following, because the more conversations we have, the more you will see the work life harmony system at work. The more you'll be trained on how to do what I call system thinking. The more you'll be
Mm,
able to see the boundaries, organization, and sustainable systems at work. These are solutions to every single problem that every leader can have. I know it's a bold statement, but I say it often because I believe it, and I know it's true because it's proven itself time and time again. You said, okay, that your ideal self, you had gotten to a point where you had to do what I call the pregnant pause, where it's a pause, but it's like a bow and arrow, where it feels like you're moving backwards, but it's to propel
mm,
you forward. But it
mm-hmm.
requires that trust and courage and discipline to pause. And that's the
Yes.
true challenge when you are used to going. And so I had two pauses like that in my life, like major shifts that totally changed the trajectory of my entire destiny when I was obedient. And so I love to
Mm,
hear, you mentioned common thread. I love to hear that. And that's why this podcast excites me, because I'm pulling real people from all over the world that's
absolutely.
represented, where we can see these commonalities, right? And we can see God's work at hand.
Mm,
We can see patterns. We can see rhythms and routines, and we can pick those things. Now we all have different stories and challenges and things like that, but we're more similar than we are different. And the
yeah.
thing that I mentioned in the last podcast is that what we do with the work life harmony system is that we take it from interrupting a leader's pattern to say, does
Mm,
your ideal version of yourself match your reality? And most of the
that's it.
time, they don't align. I want this. I want to be this type of mom. I want to be this type of this. But you just chose a job to be a, traveling agent or a
Right.
whatever. It doesn't match what you just said that you want to do, and that match. And so a lot of times we become in conflict with our higher self. It
Yep.
happens all the time, and it shifts from quarter to quarter, from season to season. It's a shift. And that's why the quarter prep is so key, because it causes you to press a pause on life and to make
Mm,
sure the alignment is there. And that's what I heard when you just said that. I had a pause, and what you
yeah.
were doing was you were checking and cross-referencing the
Yes.
alignment. Why do
Yes.
I feel this way when I'm doing the very thing that I thought that I loved?
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? That's what you were doing. You were and really when you create that alignment, you know what that is? Authenticity at its finest.
That's
That's it.
good. Yeah.
And so when I experience you now, Tamara, just from seeing you from back then, and you were amazing back then, but the glory you sit in now, the
Oh, don't.
soberness, the beauty,
Yeah.
the clarity, the wisdom
Oh,
that
don't
you
let me
sit
tear
in,
up
I'm
on your
telling
podcast.
you.
You're not gonna
I
get me.
mean, I mean that
Yeah.
comes from the internal work. That comes from
Hmm.
allowing yourself to pause and being obedient, like you said, even when you didn't want to. You know?
Yeah. And it's I think sometimes we think when we shift, we're no longer acknowledging what we wanted. You
Right.
know, you can still acknowledge what your expectations were, but it's okay to want something different. You
Yes.
know, for me, like I loved my time in the fashion industry as a stylist. I could keep trying to revisit that in the same way. I wouldn't love it the same way.
Right.
But now I've created a platform along with my business partners that elevates those who are pursuing it
I love it.
in their time. And
I
I
love
can
it.
understand exactly where they're coming from. And I still love it for myself. And I can thrive in that. But I think sometimes we think, well, you know, you're almost doing a disservice to the person that you imagine if you move on. And it's actually the total opposite, right? It's
Absolutely.
it's a
And,
total opposite.
and you know what? The way I like to look at it, I like visuals, so people can really illustrate what's happening.
Mm,
When we stop doing and doing and doing and having this long to-do list and stop being human doers and really embrace becoming human beings the way God designed us to be and to
mm,
sit in our beingness, what happens is that we allow life evolution to happen, and we
yes.
don't resist it, and we allow it to flow. And the things that are happening outside of our control, we yield to it because we all know it's working out for our good in the end, right? And there's really only two states that we should operate in as extraordinary leaders. Want to know what those two states are?
Yeah, please.
You're,
We
you're
all
doing
do.
it. You're doing it. It's being and becoming. That's it.
Wow.
This is why
Wow.
I'm able to experience you the way that I am. You are becoming. And so I met you at one state, and then years later I'm meeting you at this other reintroduce yourself, state of
Yeah.
life. And that's what should be happening. It's showing up in your beingness every day, and being palatable enough, with God, going through the rhythm of life in such a way that you allow him to let you become. And it's
Mm.
just constant becoming, a constant state of
It's
that,
a constant
you
becoming.
know?
I think thrive is my favorite word. I probably say it all the time, but there's something exhilarating about the becoming once you understand that it's natural.
Yes,
You know,
that's
once
it.
you
I love it.
understand that it's a part of the
Part of
process,
life.
there there
Yeah.
is there is no I became. You know,
Yes. Yes. It doesn't
it's
exist.
constant. You don't arrive
Yeah.
there, but
Yeah.
that's what's wonderful about, being on this earth to breathe another day. It's that you can continue to become and help others become as well.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And when you show up in your becoming, that's what it ignites into people into inspire action,
Yeah.
right? Because that's what it's like, man, you can't help but to see the light shine. And so now
Mm-hmm.
you're want to move into inspire action. This is what the work life harmony and the free life movement is all about,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I want to talk a little bit about what that looked like from a practical standpoint. You
Okay.
realize I'm traveling, I'm pumping milk in conference rooms and all
It's
like the
crazy.
visual, I can see it, right? And like, I can't do this anymore. This is
Yeah.
like not working. I don't like the way this is making me feel, honoring those feelings, right? That's part of
Mm-hmm.
the best, highest form of self love and self care, honoring those feelings and
Mm-hmm.
pivoting accordingly, not just ignoring the feelings and keep moving, is what a lot of us do. So you honored your feelings. You're like, this doesn't feel aligned for me. And
Right.
then what happened after that, and what were some of the challenges that hit you when you took that pivot back at the house?
Well, one was being vulnerable in a way that I can't say I have been before. So I have the blessing of having a partner in my husband where we can, sit down. We always say we have to sit down with our cup of tea and talk it out.
All
And
right.
all right, it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Just give it to me. Let's do it. I have a box of tissue. Whatever we need to do. And so I started to express that to him. But even as I was expressing it, he wasn't surprised because he also, he knows me very well. And he's like, yeah, you're kind of always pushing through. You're always pushing through. You're always exhausted, always distracted. And so I said, well, I don't know. I'm going to pray about it. I'll pray about it and see what happens. And all I got was, I mean, quit that job. And I was like, but the money, Lord, like, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So the next thing became planning for the exit.
Ooh, good.
And it wasn't because I was planning to jump into a business that I was going to start right after the exit. I started getting advice like, if I have a period of time where I'm not working anywhere, which was very strange for me because I'm always working somewhere and doing something on the side, what could I be doing? And I got advice from friends that are smarter than me, which I love to have.
Good.
And they gave me advice on consulting and contract work and things like that would give me flexibility. So I had to plan for that exit because I knew that I pushed it for a year, a whole year of just, no, I don't want to leave my stability and my salary. But it was what needed to happen for me to at least stop traveling. That was the
Yes.
first thing. And then I could open myself up to other opportunities.
That's
Um,
awesome.
the next thing that I had to do is when I finally made that big move and left that role is I had to understand what I was going to offer to the world because I I spent about a month trying to figure out, do I just want to dive into motherhood like you were talking about that case study earlier? I want to
Mm-hmm.
dive into motherhood and just be home all the time and just care about the house. And I think I was about 2 weeks in and went,
Nope, that's not what I want to do either.
no, this is not it either. But it was,
Exit,
but what
please.
yeah, I was like, I need other things to do. Like, this is a never ending cycle. I could never get this house clean enough. I'll drive myself crazy. So, so it took,
Wait, before you say that, it's
uh-huh.
like I think I heard. I don't know if it was someone else that said it. It's like trying to get the house clean. When you have small children, it's like brushing your teeth and eating Oreos at the same time.
Same time,
That's the word.
literally. And when I was working, that's all. That was just something on the side. I wish the house was clean, but I have other
Right,
things to do.
right,
When that first month out of my job, I'm like, this is driving me more crazy than I thought it was before. Because it's all I'm thinking about.
right,
So,
right.
so, um,
The
but
reality of life.
the reality, and I think I also had to give myself time to feel that. I had never done that before. I never gave myself time to think about how I felt about each step. I remember I still had a full calendar 3 months out past my last day at my role,
Wow.
because those are the cylinders I was operating on
Wow.
within that job. Full schedule, almost, it felt like 15 hours out of every day. It was just full packed. And then I would get home and it's like, okay, hurry up and take care of the kids. All
Yeah.
right, I have to get back to working at about 10 for a couple more hours before I go to sleep.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and
Wow. Wow.
so when I realized how much I was doing and how much of it I honestly truly did not want to do, like I can do it, but
Mhm.
I don't want to
Want
do it. Why
to.
am I doing this? The things that I kept pushing down on my to-do list, like I'll move it to tomorrow and then to Friday and then to next week. I'm like, you don't actually want to do these things. Is there a way that you could live a life where you're not required to do these things, but do more of the things that you cross off first?
Absolutely. That's so
And
good. That's so
yeah.
good. Um, I want to just take a moment for the listeners to really digest what you said, because I think that's another thing is that when we experience life, we experience it so quickly that we're not
Yes.
really digesting and processing and
Mm-hmm.
sitting in the revelation and in the wisdom, that's being shared. So I just want to honor this space in your time, that for those of you who are listening, and I want you to have an honest moment with yourself and just ask yourself, are you giving your job, your career, your business, the best of you and
Mm,
yourself and your family, what's left of you? I did
absolutely.
it.
Did it.
Tamara's done it. You know what I'm saying? So if you're in that place where you feel like you do an inventory of your time and more time is spent executing work related tasks versus getting in your word, spending time in the presence of God, spending quality time with your children who have expiration dates, I might add.
Yeah.
They're a lot like
So
milk.
true.
They have expiration dates. And
So
you don't
true.
want to drink, you don't want to experience a spoiled relationship because
Mm,
you did not impart during the times that mattered most in their life. The cost is too high,
the cost is too high.
right?
Absolutely.
And so I want to talk about some things that work for you. So we do something called start, stop, and continue with the work life harmony system. And with that, there's some things that we realize. What do we need to start doing? That's it's just we realize something new has to happen in order for us to experience what you mentioned, a fullness of life. Not
Mm,
drudgery tasks, but what can I start doing to experience a better lived experience? What do I need to
mm-hmm.
stop doing? It's not working. Why am I keep doing it? It doesn't work. I need to stop. Don't me, I can't eat after 7. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for my body. I just had to stop
Yeah.
doing it, right? Altogether. Not even cheat days on weekends. I can do it. No, just stop. What are
Just
your
stop.
stops? And then what are things that are working that you want to continue? Me drinking my alkaline water with the cucumbers and taking my vitamins in the morning, it works for me. It gives me that energy. My probiotic, these things work. You know, so what are some things that you realize, some strategies that you can share with the professionals and the seasoned entrepreneurs who are listening to you that works well, that's giving you a rhythm, that makes you feel supported, that makes you feel alive? What are some things that you personally do in your life that you can share?
Well, since you talked about the kind of some of the wellness components, I realized that 7 hours of sleep is my sweet spot. If I
Mm.
can get 7 hours, it doesn't have to be 9, it doesn't have to be 5. Um, 7 hours is my sweet spot. Does it mean I go to bed at 9 o'clock every night like a good girl? No. But I use the app on my phone that kind of all I have to do is turn the dial to see where 7 hours is going to land me. If I know it's going to be a late night, I know that 11 o'clock means that I'm going to have to sleep until I believe it's like some 6 o'clock. You know
That's
that I
good.
can't. So at
That's
first
big.
I thought, well, I would love to get up at 5 o'clock every morning. Well, in order for me to do that, I know what time I have to go to bed now,
Right.
and I can work
Right.
backwards.
Got you.
Um, but if I don't get to bed at that time, I'm not waking up at 5 o'clock the next morning
Exactly. That's right.
because I know 7 hours is my sweet spot.
That's awesome.
Um, um, of course, with all of the responsibilities I was carrying before, I was drinking more caffeine. I had a baby that wouldn't sleep. I was traveling, and so I cut that back to one caffeinated drink in the middle at about 2, 3 o'clock, instead of trying to do one in the morning, do one, afternoon, or if I go past that time, I know it's going to interrupt me trying to get that 7 hours
Please.
at night.
Right.
So I really started to think about the times where I felt my best. What did I do when I felt the
Mhm.
best in my body, the most present? What did I do differently that day?
Absolutely. And I love the way you use the word differently because that is what this movement is all about, to
Mm-hmm.
love, to live, to lead differently. And so the
Right.
things that you're just sharing, these are things that are different. Average people aren't
Yes.
doing that. Average people aren't observing their self and observing their day and observing when they're in their optimal space and making sure that
Mm-hmm.
they plan their day, before their day begins and the preparation that requires. This is habits and rituals of people who want to love, live, and lead differently, who
Mm-hmm.
don't want to live an average life. They want to live an extraordinary life. And so I want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. You are a
Thank you.
shining star that beams so bright. Your presence creates a radiant glory from heaven. And I'm so honored to be able to connect and share this space with you. I just want to encourage everyone to learn more about Tamara Smith at loveofurbandesigns.com. Check her out, everything that she has happening in the world. I want to continue to admonish you to share and like this podcast with extraordinary people who want to love, live, and lead differently. People who want to truly humble themselves, right? And learn the principles necessary so that they can turn them, transform them into practices, and experience life in complete freedom. All right. Thank you so much for connecting with me. Remember, work life balance doesn't exist. You're not going to find it.
It does not.
You can look under the bed, look behind the curtain, it won't be there. Work life
Mm-mm.
harmony, you won't even be able to find it. Work life harmony is something you create. And this is your moment to create it. Mwah. Love you all. Love you. Talk to you soon.